Okay, so husband and wife team, RC Williams and Juliana Armand are co-founders of Watchmen Action, focused on connecting like minds to the tools and resources they need to flip the balance of power back to the people. The organization has grown out of their co-founders' success with their market research firm, Sherlock. That success led to the launch of their two publications, Ripped from the Headlines, which breaks down what the news means, and We Are the Watchmen Weekly, connecting the dots between current events and scripture. They are also the authors of Empowered to Act, Maintaining the Pillars of Patriotism, crafted for grassroots activists and community builders who aspire to effect meaningful change. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to RC and Juliana.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, thank you, Becca. I'm sending you a request so we can share. So let me know when looks like we're good. Okay, great. So let's do this. And then let's do this and that.
Excellent.
Guys, again, it's a blessing. You know, one of the big initiatives I mentioned a minute ago for Watchman Action is ensuring that we provide life service to the next generation versus lip service. There's a lot of that going around. And it's important for us that we have you guys who are ready and willing, and look at us, you know, we're Gen Xers and we bridge the gap in a way between generations, and you're looking to us for guidance. And so it's great to actually be able to do that and to share with others what you guys are doing. So we're excited to do this with you today and to share our experience. And the title really kind of says it, Why Your Tribe Matters, Keys to Victory in Building Community. And what's great, Joshua was on this train as well, is there is a compound return on building community. And we're talking thousands of times of return, and we'll get to that in a bit. But as we go through today and you guys work on the exercises that we've put together, the thing to keep in mind is that the story that you tell is critical to how much you grow or how you're able to contribute in a community. So we kind of ran through this. Just a quick recap on us. We're founders of Sherlock. We have our two news publications. Those grew out of the research work that we were doing. Juliana caught it right away. It's like, hey, we need a place to publish all this information so people have a repository. And we did something interesting that I think would be helpful for the folks on this call too. When we put together Rip from the Headlines and We Are the Watchmen, our goal was to turn them into search engines in a way that if people were looking for information on a particular topic, let's say economics or digital currency, they could go to Rip from the Headlines, type that into the search bar, and see historically all the stories and all the work that's been done. So they're not worrying about, is this right? Is this wrong? Where did this come from? It's all in one place. And as you build, it is important to keep a repository of information. How you did it is as important as you doing it, so that others, as you grow and move on, can take over and the organization doesn't suffer. We are also co-founders of Watchmen Action, and we co-host a TV show on the Beck Network, which is over the air in the Dakotas and Western Minnesota, and then streams all over the country. Interestingly enough, it is not, the folks who own Beck aren't believers. Our show, The Culture Crossroads, is a Christian-based show, and they put no restrictions on us, which shows you the power of the Father when you do what you're supposed to do. And then there's the book, Empowered to Act, Maintaining the Pillars of Patriotism. We'll share more on that in a bit. So let's get to quickly what we're going to cover for you today. We're going to talk about what community is. The word gets thrown around a lot. I know you guys hear it a lot from people older than you who are trying to get you to do something that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you. So words matter. We'll get to that. Why it matters to you. We talked about the compound return on investment in community. So we'll walk through that. And then we're going to walk you through how to build it. So we're going to start with the fundamental root from the Watchman Action curriculum, and that's being able to form your story so that you can go and share it with others.
And that's how you build your community.
Yeah. All right. So words matter. I think everybody agrees with this statement universally. So we actually took the word community and broke it down. If you go to the Oxford Dictionary, you can find this. So community, generally speaking, is a unified body of individuals. Makes sense, right? Hey, we want to get together and do this thing. We're doing it with YPN right now. The second part of the definition is equally as important. A feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. If this is done right, and here's the premise of it, every economy, every community is built on trust. I don't care what it is or what you do, whether it's your family, economics, doesn't matter. All communities and all economies are built on trust. So the sharing of common attitudes, interests, and goals is important. And setting a foundation of trust within those ecosystems, our tribes, are going to determine the level of return for that community and everyone else that you impact. You know, Joshua mentioned earlier about, hey, if somebody had not been on and described what they do or how they did it, this person wouldn't have gotten help. Mission critical to remember.
As a matter of fact, you guys opening up with, this is who I am was really, really important. When RC and I were running 1 million cups, I would ask 3 very important questions every time. Number one is, who's new in the room? They would stand up, introduce themselves and what they did. The second thing I would ask is, who did something together? Like, who's working on a business project together? Who met with each other to get to know each other so they could do referrals together? And those people would stand up and they would get really excited about the fact that people inside the room were cultivating work together, right? And then the third thing I would ask is, who went outside of 1 million cups and talked about what we were doing? Because 1 million cups was the only weekly business opportunity for people that were building companies to come together and say, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is the help that I need. So it was really important for us to build that sense of unity within that community.
Yeah. So we agree that words matter.
Yep.
So why does this matter? We talked a minute ago about compound interest in building community. This is a key to victory. Yep. Understanding that, one, you're building, but 2, why you are building. Why does this matter beyond me? And 3, am I or are we building this to maintain or even grow larger after we move on? Because let's be honest about life. We all grow. You guys are growing in your careers. 5 years from now, you won't be in the same place. You will be doing more and better because you have learned, and those opportunities are going to present themselves. What happens to the opportunity that you have now with community if you leave? If you ask yourself that question right now, and the answer is it won't continue, you've got to reassess the compound interest that you get and others get from building, maintaining, and setting the community up to grow. Because if you don't, people can't take ownership. And that leads to the second part of why it matters. You know, Julianna mentioned 1 million cups a minute ago, and we're going to talk about what spun out of that, which is really our baby, the lab as a community and business resource center. So 1 million cups was actually put together by the Kauffman Foundation, a nonprofit based in Kansas City. And the goal was for entrepreneurs to meet, learn, and grow over 1 million cups of coffee. It has been affectionately in the past called Startup Church. It's also been called Guppy Tank because it's a place where entrepreneurs can go and share their business or idea for 6 minutes and get 15 minutes of feedback from an engaged and an experienced audience to grow. So when we took over 1 million cups here in Orlando, used to meet at Rollins College, in 2017, there were maybe 20 people a week
25.
That came, 25. And so we had to figure out an effective way to grow because we're like, this is the only real weekly entrepreneur meetup in all of Orlando that really allows people to come and do this in the right way and actually get something out of it. You know, we had an hour. So what do? What Julianna mentioned a moment ago about the 3 questions, and you guys are already doing some of this with this group, is mission critical. People cannot engage unless they understand the rules of engagement. So it became known, and people started to gravitate to this, that when I come to 1 million cups, I know at 8:30 there's coffee and conversation. I know at 9 a.m. on the dot, whether I'm in the room or not, 1 million cups Orlando is going to start. And it is going to involve a level of participation from me. The more I participate in the process, the more I gain from the process. So we continued to hammer home that message every Wednesday. And about 6 months after that, something interesting happened. People started to come by fives and tens, and the group started to grow larger. And
I got excited. No,
yeah,
that's it.
they started to get excited because it was easy to understand, and people understood there was value in not only engaging for themselves, but what they could bring to the group to help it grow more. So you fast forward, we grew that chapter of 1 million cups to between 75 and 80 people a week, meeting at Rollins College in the Crummer building. Parking's difficult. 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, they were coming.
Yep.
And ultimately, what came out of that was back-to-back startup weekend world champions, a lot of money raised, and a couple of business exited. And what we took from that is, if you focus on compound interest in building community, you'll win the day. And that ultimately led to the lab.
So when we were getting together every week, we realized that we needed a place where we can actually meet and do business together. And, so I literally said to all of my 1 million cups people, listen, if I find a location, would you support it? Meaning, if we're all doing events out of there, if we're all like have a membership, the location would pay for itself. So we went out and we got a facility. We called it the Lab Orlando, where we could literally come together, putting on events, teaching each other, doing business together, meeting with our clients at the place, like really building the community. Having the facility was really important. But note the fact that everything that RC and I have been able to accomplish has been because we built the right community around us. Like, this topic is so important to your success, because your success is not just about you. It's about who you surround yourself with, who knows what it is that you're doing, so they can say, you know what, I have a recommendation, or can I help you over here? I would like to introduce you to that person over there, right? It's the community that you're within that's really going to determine how successful you are, and also being able to give your gifts to other people. We were working with 1 million cups, and our company grew. We didn't have to really hire people. We more had the help of the community helping us as we were helping them. It was so beautiful and natural the way that it happens when you have the right people around you.
Yeah, key takeaways from the lab. So, number one, there's never going to be a perfect time for you to do something like build a community or to join one and have an impact. The idea of the lab came along, and we said, okay, great, we're going to go find a place. We signed the lease, 10 days later, COVID shut down, right? So we had an opportunity to walk away, and we didn't. We said, you know what? This is necessary. And where we did it, here in the Orlando area, it was in the Paramore district. Historically, that's an opportunity desert. Now, you guys may have heard the term food desert. That's a place where there is no fresh food. An opportunity desert is where there is no hope or opportunity. So being planted in a place like that with a venue where we could make an impact, we said, let's flip the stereotype of underserved community always needs a handout, and they're never really going to do the things that they should probably do, but that's okay. I'll feel good about it if I contribute to them or I donate something. We said, no, people are capable. They simply need a place to be capable. So we went out to the community and we said, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. We would love for you to participate. We're going to bring in people that probably would never come here in the normal course of a day. And we want to move the needle. And that started to happen. Members of the community would come, and they had an opportunity to learn from business professionals and professionals in life and people who have been very successful, who wanted to contribute their time. And that's where the concept of the positive collision was born. If you put people in environments where they normally are not at, and they come from very different places in life, something interesting happens if you do it in a meaningful way. they don't separate into their own mini tribes. They become very curious about why the others are there. And they start talking. And what you find is that they share more life experiences than you would think. People who are successful or wealthy usually had to go through massive struggles to get there. So they understand what it's like to struggle. And people who struggle are some of the most resourceful people in the world because they constantly have to figure it out. When you put two groups like that together, amazing things happen. We had young people working with older people on business ideas. Those young people got mentorship that they would never get. So while there's never a right time, because in our mind, oh, it's not the right time, it's not the right time. It's the right time when it's the right time. The other part is that if you are sincere about solving a problem, it does not matter where you land or what resources you have. If you are serious about solving that problem and growing a community that can have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000x impact, then you start with what you have, and that's going to go into our training here in a moment. You build your story in such a way that, one, you can easily tell it in a compelling way, but more importantly, that the person you tell it to can easily carry that message in mass without you being there. Julianna mentioned 1 million cups in the 3 questions. That third question, who went outside of this community and talked about it, led to some really interesting answers over the weeks, including someone who said, I got here because I heard about it at the Home and Garden Show. There was a collective shock. I was like, who went? Okay. And we never found out, by the way, who went to the Home and Garden Show and was talking about 1 million cups. But that's the impact. The other thing that happens, and then we'll get started on the workshop component of this, is that if you build your community in this way, it will police itself pretty effectively. So we grew, the group 75 to 80 a week were coming. We had another 5 to 10 who were helping us at like an advisory board level. So it was pretty involved, right? And you're trying to manage people. We had set the foundation in such a way that the community understood the rules. Because they understood how we operated and where the benefit of them contributing was, they took ownership of the community. That also means they took ownership over what happened to it. We would have people come that would potentially disrupt something, or there was some other issue. Julianna and I wouldn't hear about it for weeks. And then someone would say, oh yeah, we took care of so-and-so. It's like, wait, what happened? And they're like, oh, there was a problem with this, but we knew how to deal with it because this is how the community polices itself. So we took care of it and it's all good. You don't have to worry about it. At that point, we knew that the organization could work without us. And we knew we had reached a milestone in community building by hearing that statement. So you guys here in business, start with the end in mind. It also applies when it comes to building community, being a part of it, and building your tribe.
Awesome.
Good?
Yep.
All right. So let's move on to how to build it. Now with audience participation. And Beck, I think you may have shared the link in the chat for the worksheet. So there's a fillable PDF that comes with this. Now, if you're on a phone, don't panic. You can take out a piece of paper, you can write this, or you can commit it to memory. We're going to go through a couple of questions. This exercise is designed to help you to shape your story about you and your community, whether it's been realized or not, in a way that you can share it with someone and they can share that message. So before we get into the questions, here are some things to think about. As you're building your story, you've got to have a beginning, middle, and end. I would strongly recommend the writings of Carmine Gallo. Carmine Gallo was a news anchor in LA for years, and he and his wife started an executive coaching company. He wrote the book Talk Like Ted, also The Storyteller's Secret, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. What he discovered is that the human mind works in 3 acts. This is why people do things in series of 3, because that's how the brain works. Every good story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And within that, there has to be something compelling. What was the defining event or the obstacle that got you to this point? Was it an easy choice? People are hungry. I need to feed them, right? Or was it more complex? Well, people are hungry. I need to feed them, but there is no way to get healthy food into this food desert community. So I've got to build infrastructure. And then what is the lesson or the moral of the story that you would give someone? Example, if we do not set up infrastructure to feed people in this underserved community and get them fresh food, this community will not exist in the next 36 months. It will be over. The people will either die or move on. The challenge with that is that this part of the community is critical. We can't let that happen. So as you guys are going through this, I want you to be thinking about that. So here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go through 3 slides quick to give you guys the questions. Then we're going to go back to question 1 and take a couple of minutes with each one. So let's do that so you guys can see the questions first. So the first one is the challenge. What hardship or obstacle came into your life that disrupted life and put you at a crossroads? Pretty straightforward, right? The second one is choice. What was it like at the fork in the road? Fears, unknowns, consequences. What happened to have you to make that choice? Young people who are believers need a place to come where they can get guidance and fellowship so they can go out and carry the message of the gospel. Pretty straightforward for YPN, right? I didn't need a description to do that. I know that inherently by how Becca and Joshua run the group. So choice is number 2. And then number 3 is the outcome. What were the consequences? Triumph. What's the moral of the story? Easy or complex? So let me do this. Let me go back here. And I'd like for you guys to take 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, and jot down your challenge. So let's say that you're building your community, or you're going to contribute to YPN in some meaningful way because you're inspired after being on for a couple of calls. What does the beginning of that story look like? What is the challenge that you're going to solve? So let's take a couple of minutes with that and we'll move on.
If anybody needs help, just let us know.
So as you're working on that, you see in the upper right-hand corner, it says Gans's model for your story, challenge, choice, and outcome. Those 3 steps. How big is the problem that needs to be solved? That's what happens here. All right, guys, take another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll move on to number 2. And I'll keep a timer for the next 2, I promise.
Should we go over and give an example and talk about it? Or do we want to just go through the question?
We'll Okay, guys, so we got the challenge down, right? What is the problem or challenge that brings you to the place where you know it needs to be solved? So far, so good? let's go ahead and move to the next one. So the choice, what's the fork in the road? Man, these people are hungry. Man, how do we get them food? What happens if we don't? I'm making the choice to jump in and solve this problem. I may not have all the answers, but I'm going to work to get there. So let's think about what's in the choice. What brought you to the point where you know you needed to do this? Let's take a couple of minutes. I've got the timer going here on it. All right, guys, take another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll move on to the outcome. What fear or unknown or potential consequence inspired you to make the choice to take the step in overcoming the challenge? All right. If everybody's good, we'll move on to the outcome. So the outcome is the bridge from your story to the situation or the issue or the solution, right? So you've brought people on this journey. They understand that there's a challenge. These people are hungry because the location is a food desert. I know that if I don't take action within 3 years, this community will no longer exist. The elderly will die off from systemic illness, and young folks will move away, and it will become completely barren, and it's going to be a loss to this community. Here's what I'm going to do about it. This is the outcome. Here's what I envision by doing that and getting a group of people to come along with me. Here's how we can solve this problem in cities throughout the country. So go ahead and take a few minutes with the outcome and let's see how you do. Guys, as you put this first kind of story together, the model that you're building, again, will work for pretty much anything that you want to do. Once you have this system down, you can utilize it for anything. It may be building a community. It may be growth in your chosen career. It may be building your business. This will allow you to tell a compelling story that gets people to move, and it will also allow them to tell that story without you being around in mass. That's how things, in essence, go viral. So we'll take another minute or so, and then we'll talk about your stories. All right, guys. So we got those pieces together. So the other part of the PDF is you'll have a place where you can write your story here. It should really come in under 3 minutes. You can do a lot in 3 minutes time. But you should be able to position it that way, and it should be natural and conversational, and you can tweak it for whoever you're talking to. If you are talking to a large donor, for instance, you would tweak that conversation in such a way where it would pique their interest to get them to take a desired action. You'd like for them to donate to you, or you'd like for them to open doors or connections for you. There's a section for you to write your story there. So here's what we'd like to do. For those of you guys who did some of the work on this, we'd like to hear a few of your stories. They don't need to be complete, but we'd like to hear them and talk through them to see how we can enhance them or what's valuable that comes out of those.
Maybe I'll start with my story, and I'll answer the questions. So to give an example, oops.
Yeah, timer's up.
So I'm running 1 million cups, and I realized that we needed a place to be able to, have events and to make money together and to meet, right? More than just one time a week. I wanted a place where the entrepreneurs could be able to have a powwow. So question number 2, the fork in the road. How was I going to do that? So the person that I'm speaking to, I found a location, and I would like to be able to say, I want to build a community. Would you support what it is that I'm doing within the community? And the outcome was that we were able to gain lots of support. So thank you very much, Mr. Participant, in supporting what it is that I'm doing. I just gave a heartfelt this is what I would like to see happen, right? The fork in the road was, here's my challenge, but this is how I'm going to face my challenge. And this is a challenge of my community. And this is how I'm going to help the community, with the outcome being, I would like your participation. I would like your blessing in doing this thing, right? Because I can't build a community without other people with me. So that was my story.
Who would like to share?
Galena would.
All right.
So just a little bit of backstory. I've been here by myself. I moved here 4 years ago from Philadelphia, so I don't have a family, and I'm coming from a very different culture than a culture I'm living in for the last 4 years. So, and I already did build community in my church here before. But so the challenge is, right? So what hardships or obstacles came into my life? My move to Orlando by myself. I've been thrown into a brand new culture, which is American culture, very different from the culture that I come with. And also being here by myself and being single and my age, I realized there's a lot of people who are doing life by themselves and managing this life on their own. So the choice, what I've learned is people do have a lot of past hurt and wounds, and they often build walls and call them boundaries. So what I want is really build a community where people can find a place of belonging, where they know people and they will be known as well, where they will not be afraid of healthy confrontations, because that's truly how we grow in God and professionally, where people will learn how to ask each other questions and truly be motivated to go out and love a younger generation who are tech savvy more than community savvy, to show them the true power of community and doing life to life in the face-to-face environment.
Wow, Galena, that's so good. You've tapped into something that is a big part of the reason why we do things like this and why our focus is on the generations that come after us, because there's a huge gap. And you've expressed it in a way that we can never express. We could express our desire to solve it, but to hear that, more people need to hear that side of it. Because if you were doing this to a group of 1,000 people of varying ages, I promise you 85% of them would be nodding their head like this, and they'd be like, whoa, so I agree with that. And then they'd start asking you, well, how do we do that? Which is what you want them to do, right? How do we do that? And you'd say, I'm glad you asked, thanks for asking, here are the 3 steps or whatever we take, right? But it's such a good, simple explanation to a problem that's burgeoning. Like, the next couple of years are going to be really difficult, right? Because we have a situation where there's been social isolation, and people are coming really into kind of the prime of their careers and their lives, where interpersonal relationships and being out in the world become really important, and they're not ready. And so how do we get out in front of that and help that? So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. It's a really life story and passion.
Yes, love it. Would anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I want to jump in here and first off say this is gold, man. I hope everyone's getting as much out of this as I am. Not just for what we do at YPN, but the one I want to talk about is I recently started a coaching business for senior level executive assistants. And it wasn't something I planned on doing. It just kind of got led that way. And what I discovered while working with this group was that's a very isolated job. It can become a very lonely job, which is very interesting because a lot of them work in the C-suite or they work in the businesses, but because their role is so dynamic, nobody can really relate to them. So they don't feel like they have real peers. And generally in businesses, there's not a whole group of EAs unless you're working with, like a corporation, a major corporation where they have, EA teams. So that was the challenge, just a lot of isolation, silos, not really being able to share resources, share growth. And I made a choice to say, how can we build a community where they get connection with one another? There's experiences, so maybe they get to like do something together or travel somewhere and do something like that together. And so with that choice, I put together a board of EAs and just started asking questions. Hey, what would you all be interested in a community like this? Is that something I see it as a problem? Is it really a problem? And getting their feedback on the greatest challenges they're seeing uh, to make the choice of whether we're going to go after this. From that, we made the choice. And then next is the outcome piece, right? I think the
Yes.
outcome comes next. So for us now, it's looking at my goal is to create a community where there's shared resources, people feel connected, and there's a really strong sense of belonging around the profession of executive assistants, like us versus, the AI wave, us versus maybe some of the diminishing perceptions around the profession. And that's as far as I've gotten with this exercise. So I'll pause there.
Joshua, this is so good for so many reasons. I think you've tapped into something kind of like Galena did with young people being isolated. EAs, a lot of people don't realize they're the gatekeepers of executives. They carry so much emotional weight because they have insight on all the decisions that are being made. They largely know when people are going to be hired and fired, when a company is going to be sold or is maybe near bankruptcy or something's going sideways. They know before everybody else because they're the right hand of the people that are running the company or the board. So there does need to be a support network. God bless people who do that. Like, life lesson and professional business lesson. Be very kind to the executive assistants and chief of staffs for any group, because they can make or break whatever
That's
you're
right.
trying to do. If they like you and they see that you care, they'll open doors that you couldn't open. They'll be like, they're busy right now, but I'll make it work for you, right? That's a pro tip. So this is so important, though. And here's the other part. And I've talked to EAs about this because I encounter them pretty regularly. I'm like, you do realize that you could step away and start running your own company whenever you want. You already know what to do, right? You deal with an executive every single day. You deal with staff and air traffic control every single day. And you know what it takes to win. That's the job of an executive. You could do that right now. So don't discount yourself. Joshua, powerful. I think you're going to do well as you hone that in. You're going to find a network, and it's going to be a great mentorship network, because there are EAs who have been doing this 30, 40 years that want to share that knowledge with the younger generation because they understand it's important, and AI can never solve that problem.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more if somebody'd like to share.
Everyone's bashful.
It's okay. That's all right. So here's the good news, guys. You have that fillable PDF and you can use it. We encourage you to continue to refine, and you can do as many stories as you want and as many frameworks as you want. Keep working at it and it becomes second nature. So let's do this. Let's start to land the plane here, right? For those of you who are on this call now or are watching this later, this means something slightly different than it did when we first met it earlier, doesn't it? Now that you've gone through this exercise. A unified body of individuals. You now have the how and the why of getting there. You also have the how of the feeling of fellowship with others when you share common attitudes, interests, and goals. Your ability to convey that message in a meaningful way makes all the difference in what you do. So the word community, because words matter, it really has meaning. And when we start doing life service instead of lip service on the word, things change. Part two, all communities, just like all economies, are all built on trust. If you take nothing else away from this workshop today, all communities, all economies, everything you do in this area, family, friend dynamics, is all built on trust. You will get compound interest in community if you take what you learned today and the stories we shared with you about 1 million cups in the lab and you apply them to your situation. You're talking 100,000 million X return in compound interest on your community building. Okay. Last one, you have this with you. When you visualize the things to think about, remember that your stories need to have definitive beginning, middle, and ends. Okay. And it's not like in the beginning and then in the middle and the end. No, not like that. How'd you get there? What made you make the decision to engage? And how does the future look, or how is this going to end? Right. And then from there, you can nail down what's going to be most important. Galena and Joshua shared similar stories in different segments, but they could take small parts of what they did and make them their entire calling card for everything they want to do with those ideas. Once you write it out and you start to talk it out and you engage with people, you're going to start to see what the thing is that gets people to perk the eyebrow or to lean in to what you're saying and say, wait a minute, repeat that. I need to understand that better. And that becomes your calling card. With the lab, we were thinking about what's the tagline for a place like this. And we had already created it with 1 million cups. People-powered community. You don't need to guess. What is this? A people-powered community. Oh, wow. So the people make sure that this engine goes. I want to be a part of that where people are participating, not just taking a ride.
That's right.
Yeah. So guys, that's how it works. We have a few minutes, Becca, Joshua, we can take questions. We're happy to answer that any folks have for as long as we can.
I would like to know what everybody thinks about the community that they have and what they would like to build around them as a community of people. Like what you guys are doing here with the young professionals is fantastic, right? This is a great community of people.
I'll go. Yeah. So I believe that God is providing me with new community in different areas of my life. When I first moved to the Orlando area, I wasn't aware of how many faith-based networks there were in this area. So when I was here for the first couple of years, it was just me going to church, right? That was my only faith-based, like that's where I was plugged in from a faith-based standpoint. But to come across organizations like the Christian Chamber and so many different other organizations, I'm like, I had no idea, but it's so important because every time I go into a chamber meeting, I'm reminded like Jesus is the source, right? No matter what we're doing, no matter what industry we're in, we need to make sure that we're in the vine, right? Make sure that we are doing everything from what God has given us. So I definitely appreciate that from a personal and professional standpoint. And, I know that God is just reframing my community because we can't, anything that He has called us to do, we can't do it alone. So it's super important to be around the right people who see you the way God does, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that was perfect and beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Shalisa, I'm so glad that you shared that because I don't have to guess with you guys on this call where you stand, right? Because your belief precedes you. That's part of our calling when you think biblically, right? We are, our friends in North Carolina have a church, and Cameron always says this. He says, you may be the only Bible that people ever encounter. Okay. What are they going to get when they engage with you? Our prayer on a daily basis is for His light to shine so bright in us that when people see us, they don't see us, they see Him. That's a life lesson, right? In the kingdom. And I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing.
Well, I think something that's been really helpful too for me is growing up my whole life, I've been involved in different communities, whether through friends, family, professional, whatever it is. And so I don't know, I just haven't really thought of it like this. Like I've never put it through this kind of story context. And so I don't know, it was really interesting because I was instantly thinking about like my neighborhood. I was thinking about YPN. I was thinking about church. Like all these different little area, not little, but all these different areas of my life. And so, like, I think I love to go deep. It's also what I do for a profession is like the five whys. Okay, like, well, why is this and why is that and why, like going down the whys. And so it really made me think of like, okay, well, was there like what even made me interested in this group or what brought me to like this decision? So this was really interesting. It was super interesting.
Thank you for sharing, Becca. I mentioned Carmine Gallo's books earlier. I want to mention them again. So I found his work probably about 11 or 12 years ago when I was working in the Silicon Valley. He wrote The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. So I'm an audiobook guy. It's like a 4-hour listen. I still listen to that book once a quarter because every time I do, I get something else out of it about how we're designed. And if you read like The Storyteller's Secret, he takes the stories of the best storytellers, gives you context around it, and the nuggets that you need to take away. From a community building standpoint, it is critical. From a life standpoint and your professional growth, your ability to do this is make or break, right? If you're running a business, you're only as good as the story that you have. It doesn't matter if your product is great. If nobody understands it, it's just going to sit there and be a great product that nobody uses.
Another video that's really good is Start With Why.
Yeah,
Simon Sinek. Yeah.
Yeah, if you watch his TED Talk, I think it's like 18 minutes. They're all 18 minutes or something like that. If you haven't, it's life-changing. If you have, you should go back and watch it again. It's another one we try to do regularly because he helps to give more context to that.
So good.
Yeah.
I had a quick question, if we can.
Sure.
So I'm part of a lot of different communities that are more online. But I also cherish a lot face to face, and that's what I've been trying to build here in Orlando, my church, and just overall. How do you see, from your experience, what's the effectiveness level have you seen where communities are only online in the entire country versus where it can be online, but also face to face incorporated? What was the effectiveness level there? The belonging, the whole part. I kind of have my own understanding because I can compare, but I wanted to hear from your guys' perspective because you have a lot of different experiences in that.
Yeah, online communities are great, but what we found, and COVID kind of did this, right? Because it forced us to really focus online, is that the groups that made it and have really had an impact, even though they were remote, what they started doing, even if it's quarterly, is in-person get-togethers. Because as human beings and believers, we need fellowship in a physical way. We need to be in the presence of each other. That's also biblical, though, right? We saw that because the ecclesia, right? The first ecclesia, it was basically the equivalent of whoever had the biggest house in the neighborhood and the second, third biggest, that's where you get together to worship, right? And that's how it worked. And it was an involved process where everyone lived out the hands and the feet, not just responsibility, but participation. So if you take that to your question, Galina, what we've seen, there are some online communities that do great. They tend to be niched either on a particular business or concept. But if you're talking about community where problems are being solved in a very effective way, the ones that are online go for a while and then they start to fade, right? Because people get busy. It's just a Zoom call. I'll make the next one. But when you're meeting in person regularly, there's also a commitment. It's like, if I miss my tribe, I'm not going to be able to see them again. Right? Or, man, I didn't know in person that you were taller. Sure, there are all these fun things that come from it. And before you know it, that relationship expands. So the ones who are really successful at it are now doing at least quarterly in-person get-togethers, even if they have members all over the country. And then regionally, they shoot for every month, if not every 2 weeks or every week, depending.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, you confirmed a lot of thought that I already see. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Awesome. And what was the book that you said that you recommended?
So there are two of them that I would recommend.
Okay.
So the storyteller, the presentation secrets of Steve Jobs, and the storyteller's secret. If you search for Carmine Gallo on YouTube or whatever, he is great. He gives away so much for free, and he teaches at Stanford pretty regularly, and he works with Fortune 50s in helping them to develop their stories. He's a very nice guy, and he loves it when people work on this type of stuff, and he gives away all kinds of nuggets. So I would certainly recommend those two books, whether you like audiobooks or regulars. Those two will certainly get you and keep you moving.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Well, I think those are really good questions. So just any other application or any other takeaways before we keep going?
Well, but I don't know if this is a takeaway as much as it is. I want to make sure that everyone understands what RC and Juliana do. So after any other takeaways, I'd love if you guys would give just another plug of how people can reach you, another refresher of how you help people. And I think even for the recording, this will be helpful because I think this information was very valuable. So I want to make sure we hit that again so they know how to contact you.
Yeah, Joshua, thank you. So there are two components for us. Sherlock is our business. We specialize in market research, in particular competitive intelligence, narrative development. Part of that you guys heard today. Groups will come to us and say, help us understand if this is a gold mine or a landmine. And then it's like, hey, great, you solved that for us. You can get us our target audience without a problem. What do we say? And so those are the ways that we help people. On the ministry side, Watchman Action, the goal is to equip the church or the ecclesia to engage the culture. And what we found is that there's a big gap between all the great tools out there that are designed to empower us to engage the culture and the people that need them. And so people were either working on one side or the other, but we're like, you need a bridge built. right? There's no bridge. If there's no bridge, people can't get one way or the other. So Watchman Action solves that problem, and we provide a fabric and a framework so that once you know the tools exist, you know how to use them, but more importantly, you know how to stack them and use them together. So you guys got a couple of pages from the Watchman Action training curriculum. It is agnostic to the tool or the group. All we care about is that you have a desire to solve a problem. It could be legislative, political, it could be kingdom focused, it could be for business. Doesn't matter. The plan will work. And we found that when we put that fabric together, people said, oh, I could have had a V8, right? That's actually a solution. And that's also a life lesson. Often the most effective solutions are the most simple solutions. So
Not true.
if you guys want to contact us, you can find everything about us. There's links to everything at watchmenaction.org. That's watch, MEN, action.org.
Awesome. All right. Thank you both so much just for being here with us. This has been like just the information that you've shared has been so valuable. So thank you again just for the investment in your knowledge and your time and your expertise. So we really appreciate it.